I just want to see that the sorter queue is. It's
You
quite.
want me to come up with a
This is
Q&A?
quite hard to
Reading
see.
off it.
Yeah.
I better have a copy of the speech in case. You got one?
Yeah, I have it. I just it's probably alright, but just it's just quite it's relatively hard to say. Do you think that's alright if I'm still you've got that both of those, you think that's okay, that are in the right place?
You mean you can't see them?
No. Down. Yep. Okay, let's leave it there. Let's have a look. Move your hand. It's not, I've got to say, it's not great. I think we need people sitting up here to try and yeah.
Oh yeah, because that's good with Swedish mock.
His emphasis stuff is in yellow. Yeah. I think it's probably better if I switch it to yellow to be slightly better.
Yeah.
It's just the room. There's too much.
Yeah, well, it's okay with somebody standing up here. But,
the light has changed.
Yeah.
I'll have a look at yellow.
Yeah, yeah. colour. It's yellow now. All yellow. Can you stop the thing?
Okay, everybody. Order. Order. Ena mana, ena reo, eiro rangatira ma, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to this State of the Nation speech from the Honourable Simon Bridges. I'm Paul Goldsmith. I just want to start off by giving you the shape of the room, just so we all know where we are. The two exits, one where you came in, and there's another one in that corner there. So if there's an incident, you know where to go. Apparently, you are allowed to smoke here, but I'd encourage you not to do that because we're in an open area. So just bear that in mind. The toilets are where you came through the door. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce and welcome Simon Bridges. As you'd expect from any National Party leader, he has an absolute focus on a strong economy as the bedrock for a successful society, to create opportunities for all of us and our families, to attain a high level of standard of living for all New Zealanders, and to enable us to fund the quality public services that we want. And we're going to hear all about that today. And so, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Honourable Simon Bridges.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, for that introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your interest in the National Party's economic plan. You know, the world is an uncertain and difficult place right now. More uncertain and difficult than it has been for some while. Recent tensions in the Middle East have seen our friends across the Western world call for cooler heads to prevail. But the threat to security and stability in the region remains. Trade wars and geopolitics define the relationship between China and the United States and threaten our economic stability and our ability to sell New Zealand to the world. Just across the Tasman, our friends are experiencing devastating bushfires which will have impacts for them, for us, and for our economy. And coronavirus is both a global health emergency and an economically significant event, more and more serious the longer that it continues. New Zealand is by no means immune. But our growth has begun slowing before we even start with these international factors. New Zealanders are doing it tougher, facing more tax, cost, red tape, and our economy is slowing, and as a result, New Zealanders are worse off. At a time of global uncertainty, when international events have direct impacts on our way of life, we cannot underestimate the need for a strong economy led by competent government with a track record of delivering for New Zealanders to protect and to buffer us. By most measures, we should be doing much, much better. Our commodity prices are high, and our terms of trade are near the best they have ever been. From our primary sector through to our technology and our innovative sectors, New Zealand should be booming and the envy of the Western world. We should be a confident, aspirational nation that is ready to tackle the global challenges head on and succeed. In short, we should be in a much better position relative to global uncertainties and headwinds. The question I'm asking Jacinda Ardern is, why aren't we? Well, because Jacinda Ardern's government has failed to deliver on its promises, has piled on tax, cost, red tape, made things more uncertain domestically at a time of global uncertainty already. And as a result, New Zealand has become a country of lost opportunities. The economy is all about its people, the workers, the business owners, the self-employed, the volunteers, and the retirees. They deserve a government that does what it says it will, that delivers with certainty and removes barriers and burdens like cost, like tax and red tape. You know, 3 years ago, our economy was growing at nearly 4% per annum. We are now almost half of that and falling. We've slipped to the 7th lowest country per capita growth in the OECD, behind the likes of Chile, Hungary, Poland, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Spain, and even Greece. Yes, I said 7th spot. When we slip so far down the chain, it's having a real impact on you and your family, particularly as we move into global turbulence. The protection isn't there, just the tax, the cost, the red tape, and uncertainty. This all means it's harder to get ahead. It means that promotion or a pay rise might take longer to get. It's far harder for your family and yourself to plan for the future and to save. Indeed, for increasing numbers, it's harder to even pay the next bill and to stay afloat. Back pockets are shrinking. It's harder to get ahead under Jacinda Ardern. Right now, someone on the average wage in New Zealand is almost $4,000 a year worse off, thanks to Jacinda Ardern's government. The median rent is up $2,600 a year because of the government's added taxes and regulations on landlords. Higher petrol taxes have made it $200 a year more expensive for the typical person to fill up their car. And cancelled tax cuts have cost the average earner over $1,000 a year. Under the last national government, your after-tax income grew twice as fast as Australia. Yet under Jacinda Ardern's New Zealand, they've gone slower than Australia. In comparison, if our GDP per capita were as good as Australia's, the average Kiwi would be 35% richer. That doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't take a country the size of Australia to achieve it. It happens when you have a stronger economy that's focused on you, led by a competent government with a track record of delivering. As Economic Development Minister and Associate Finance Minister, I saw how real this is. Whereas 2 years ago, companies were taking on new staff to keep up with demand, they're now laying people off because they don't have the workers, and more often than was the case, the work either. And the government has piled on tax, cost, and red tape, so the risk isn't worth the reward increasingly for businesses. The government's own data shows that this is the case. Job growth has dropped from 10,000 new jobs a month under National to less than 1,000 a month. In less than 2 years, Jacinda Ardern's government has taken 15 years of projected surpluses and put us into deficit. And I hate to tell you the bad news, but once a Labour government is in deficit, it doesn't get us back into surplus. All of this matters because it affects your back pocket and you. It's about your financial security and making sure you can look after your families in good times and bad. It's about you being able to live without worrying about the next bill or paying for your next tank of petrol or your next shopping trolley. It's about ensuring the future you dream of for your family becomes a reality. It's about building the roads and the public transport that gets you home on time at night. It's about schools and hospitals having the resources they need to teach your children and take care of your family. It's about police having the resources to deal with gangs and serious crime so you and your family are safe. It's about business feeling confident to take you on and give you a shot and then a pay rise. It's about getting up in the morning and seeing New Zealand ambitious and confident in itself again. I will not accept that this is as good as it gets. We should be doing much, much better. Hopes and wishes are one thing, but Kiwis deserve certainty and a government that gets things done. National's focus is simple and resolute. We will keep taxes and red tape low and grow incomes to help with your cost of living. We will be responsible managers of our economy. We will focus on growing the economy for all. We will invest more in core public services like health and education. And finally, we will create more jobs and opportunities for New Zealanders. To do this, today I am announcing 5 key measures that I want the 6th National Government's first term to be measured by. They are things that matter to Kiwis because they impact us in our everyday lives. First, New Zealand's economic growth is back to at least 3% per annum. Second, New Zealand's growth rate per person is in the top half of the OECD. Third, we are reducing our after-tax income gap with Australia. Fourth, more New Zealanders feel they can reach their potential at home rather than overseas. And fifth and finally, we have revived business confidence so that businesses feel like they can take more risks and create opportunities for you and your families. Ultimately, it is what we will do that counts the most. Over the next few months, I will be announcing our comprehensive economic plan. There are 5 major planks to that plan. Firstly, tax relief. Secondly, regulation reduction. Thirdly, infrastructure. Fourthly, small businesses. And finally, families. You know, most of these won't surprise you. For instance, on tax, we've already announced our plans to index tax brackets to cost of living, repeal the Auckland fuel tax, and introduce no new taxes. But we recognise we need to do more. We will announce our full tax plan that will see people on the average wage better off and keeping more of what they earn. People on the average wage shouldn't be paying almost 33 cents in the dollar. On regulation, you can't pile more regulation, red tape and tax and cost onto business like Jacinda Ardern's government has and expect New Zealand to succeed. We've already promised to cut red tape and regulation. We will light a regulations bonfire in our first 6 months of government and cut 2 regulations for every new one that we create. But we recognise we need to do more. On infrastructure, we not only need to build the roads to get you and your family home on time, but we need to invest in the social infrastructure that our country needs in world-class hospitals and schools. We won't be afraid to use the private sector to partner with government to deliver projects that matter to us all. That means we can deliver more roads, more rail, more transport, and more social infrastructure faster and better. We will have new thinking on infrastructure, and you will see a clear vision and plan from us of how we see New Zealand. And unlike Labour, we won't flip-flop. We believe in infrastructure and have the competence and track record to do what we say we will, to actually deliver. On small business, we've already promised to repeal employment law changes that this government has made and restore 90-day trials to all businesses. But your back pocket is hurting just as much as our families are. And we need to do something about that as well. Finally, on family incomes and cost of living. Tax relief is one part of how your family can get ahead. We know we need to do more. We need to raise incomes and get people into jobs. And we need to attack the cost of living. We need to stop rents rising because of bad government policy, petrol going through the roof because of more taxes and levies, and that a surprise bill doesn't come at your expense on your next supermarket shop. If we do all of this, not only will New Zealand be in a better position, but you and your family will be too. You'll be better protected and buffered from the international uncertainties with more money in your pocket. I firmly believe we can do this. But it's in stark contrast to what is happening now. When I hear about the company in Hawke's Bay who are locking their tools up and laying off workers because the pipeline of infrastructure projects has dried up, that means less pay, fewer jobs. It means it's less likely you'll get home on time. Through to the mum of a newborn in Kawadale who for the first time in her life had to go to the food bank to get help because Jacinda Ardern's government has raised taxes, costs and red tape and ripped money out from your back pocket. She's not the only one. Demand for emergency grants has spiralled because people can't fill their trolleys like they used to. City missions are saying demand now is much worse than it ever used to be. there is a clear choice at this election between a government that has stumbled its way into deficit and debacle and has us badly positioned because of the tax, the cost, the red tape and uncertainty as the world becomes more uncertain and difficult. And National, who has a plan and a track record of getting New Zealand back on track, creating financial stability for you and your family, and building a brighter future. I firmly believe New Zealand's best days are ahead of us. I know those tradies being laid off in Hawke's Bay can't help build the infrastructure we need to grow New Zealand and create opportunities. The mum of the newborn wants to be able to not only fill her trolley, but create the financial stability and dignity for her and her family that comes from a stronger economy, one that creates opportunities for her baby and her family. She shouldn't have to make the choice between groceries and shoes. She should be making the choice of how many after-school activities she wants to sign her children up to. There are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Kiwis up and down New Zealand who are worse off because Jacinda Ardern's government has left them behind. We are a better country than these last 2 years. We can be better than this. You know, National's view is that the 2020s should be New Zealand's decade. It should be a time when our kids go to the best schools in the world, where we build the world-class infrastructure and create more opportunities for New Zealanders, where we live in one of the safest countries in the world and we have the money to invest where it really matters to you and your family. When I look forward to 2030, when my oldest son, Emlyn, who I should say was devastated Elton John was unwell last night, will turn 18 and be preparing to take on the world on his own. I want New Zealand to be a place where he and all of his classmates have every opportunity to succeed, to be world beaters. This government is a failed experiment. A failed experiment is fine when you're in high school science, not when you're running the country. So now is our chance. The election is the most important in a generation and will set the course for the next generation. New Zealand can be better, much better. Our ambition as a country can never be too great for what we need to achieve, because 5 million New Zealanders need a government that will put them and their families at the heart of everything we do. You know, global uncertainties and headwinds need not hold us back as a nation if we have the leadership with the track record, the competence, the plan, and the ambition to see it through. All we have to do is choose this. I want to be a Prime Minister that delivers a strong, growing economy, world-class public services, infrastructure that gets you and your family home on time, safety from gangs and serious crime, and a country that is once again ambitious and aspirational about its future and ready to tackle the challenges of the 2020s head on. Thank you very much. Now, with the formal matters on, I don't know whether, Paul, you're meant to be, Goldie's meant to be emceeing this or how this works. We didn't actually get round to discussing that. But I'm very happy to do a Q&A to hear some of the things you think we need to do for our economic plan. As you will have heard, there's 5 components. And between Paul and myself and Todd McClay and Paula Bennett and Judith and others here, Mark, we have a very clear sense of what we want to do and the plan that we believe we should put out. But we would love your feedback, we would love your questions on what you think it is we need to be doing. So as they say at the auctions, who'd like to start me off? Complete agreement, 100% of the room. That is fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. It was great to hear the 5 key measures and the 5 pillars of the plan.
Yep.
And just thinking about Emlyn, is it your son who's turning?
Emlyn, yeah.
Yeah.
Be 8 in March.
For his generation and for all of us, the effects of climate change
Yep.
will be important. Where does climate change fit into this 5-year plan?
Well, I think it's incredibly important, and I think if you look through infrastructure, if you think about families, if you think about small business, you can see that it's clearly relevant to all of these things. I think, dare I say it, and to resort to the rhetoric that our Prime Minister's so good at, with a bit of rhetoric, she said in her speech to Parliament this year, judge me, judge us on our deeds. The reality of the deeds is actually this simple. Emissions under the last national government went down. Emissions right now, on the latest figures from the Ministry for the Environment, are going up and up and up, and they will continue to. But I think what you see in our plan, and dare I say it, you'll see when it comes to the environment and climate change more broadly, is we are going to be practical, sensible environmentalists. We're not going to be out there telling you it's an emergency and everything needs to change tomorrow. We're not going to be preaching in your living rooms from the classrooms about this, that and the other thing. But I look at it and I see broadly half of our emissions in primary production. I see a very clear role for biotechnology to wrestle those emissions down. And I think that's something we should move on quite quickly. I look at the other half of those emissions from transport through energy, and I think there are very readily available technological answers we should be investing in, we should be working on, whether that be a pet topic of mine the government talks about but hasn't done as much as I did on, like electric vehicles, or public transport, or in energy, a bunch of other things, from hydrogen to solar. Now, I think actually we can do well in this area. And I think when we talk about infrastructure, you can see that as part of that plan primarily, but it will come into others also. Remember, this is our economic plan, not necessarily our overarching plan on all issues from environment through safety and security. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'll let Rhonda do it so I don't get in trouble. No? Or the one there, and there's one over there, I think, as well.
G'day, Simon. Thanks very much for that. I really enjoyed the speech. Really, you like the themes around the economy. I know from my experience working with the electricity sector, we've got a lot of New Zealanders who are struggling at the moment to pay their power bills, to get their houses full. Just wondering if you can talk about, with that focus on the economy, how you can make sure that some New Zealanders are doing it tough, we don't have people falling further behind, or to make sure those gains get shared.
Yeah. Well, look, this is front and centre of my mind. You may have heard me on television and radio and so on, but I think there's 3 simple things we need to do. Today, really, I'm talking about the first one. I think probably for New Zealanders right now the most important, and that is delivering a stronger economy where people have more money in the pocket. But of course, it's also about transport and infrastructure and building those roads. The Prime Minister has had a Damascus experience on, and ensuring security for our families. Look on that. I hope everything I've said suggests that I agree with you. It's a very real problem. I could damn you with statistics, but I think broadly speaking, we see a New Zealand today where workers, I mentioned the potential for tax relief when it comes to the average worker in New Zealand on 65,000 or thereabouts a year. They're doing it tough. Frankly, they feel they're working harder. They're longer in traffic in Auckland. What is it, a couple of hours a day potentially if you live out in some of the electorates these good people here represent. You're not earning more, but your costs are going up. I mentioned $4,000. Now, our electricity actually, because I think fundamentally we've, dare I say it, from reforms that Jerry Brownlee, myself, Judith Hekia-Parata did, got a workably, it could be better, but a workably competitive market. But I look at it, and whether it's rent regulation pushing rents up, whether it's taxes and levies on petrol, or whether indeed it's an electricity where I think we can still be a more competitive market, we need to wrestle those down. We'll attack it in two ways. And you'll see that, I promise you, quite clearly in our plan. On the income side of the ledger, when it comes to tax relief, and on the other side of it when it comes to cost, and doing away with some of the, I think, needless, ill-conceived regulation we've seen from this government that is bogging business, but more than that, ultimately New Zealanders down and making it harder on their hip pocket. You know, we don't want much, I don't think, as New Zealanders, as Norman Kirk said, but we do want a situation where people can pay the bills and still have some money left over to make choices for their families and have a brighter future. Did we?
Without wishing to diminish your emphasis on the need for financial security, I wonder, however, whether your policy would give a sense of hope to the younger generation, many of whom are voters, and many of them are losing hope because our government, our country, is not willing to look at all the global insecurities, our military alliances, our global warming, pollution, 600,000 refugees in Syria, so on and so on. Do we not, a government that puts these perhaps ahead of our individual wealth?
I think ultimately we can do both, and I hope that came through. I mean, I started on the international situation. I, for one, believe we're in a more uncertain and difficult place in the world than we have been. I ran through some of those factors, whether it's bushfires in Australia or coronavirus, where clearly we don't sort of know where it started or where it will end. And, you know, even if it ended tomorrow, it would be a very significant effect. I don't mean to be glib, but we can only control what we can control. And that doesn't mean we're not a good international citizen. But the point of this speech, really, if you want it in a nutshell, is we shouldn't underestimate the importance of a strong economy for New Zealanders and our future generations. And my contention to you is pretty basic. Actually, you need a government that's competent on this and has the track record. And yep, we knew that with John Key. But dare I say it, when you look at our team, myself as Economic Development Minister, as Associate Finance Minister, and Transport and various other areas, we have the experience and the acumen to achieve what future generations need. And that's why we're going to hold ourselves to these measures. I talked about growth. You know, growth in New Zealand for the last 20 years has had an average of about 2.8%. The last 5 years of national was 3.4%. That matters. That provides options. That provides the ability for New Zealand to fund the infrastructure, the health, the education, the police that we require. And it means actually those families have the money in their pocket to do what they need to for their whānau. You know, I just mentioned Norman Kirk, and I was thinking about it quite a bit in the weekend. I thought Jack Tame was going to ask me something along these lines. He didn't. You know, Norman Kirk said, you know, we don't want much. Somewhere to live, somewhere to love, probably getting the order wrong, a job, and a bit of hope. That's fundamentally true. But I hope what you get from the speech is I want a lot more than that for Emlyn. I want him to be a world beater. We can set our sights higher than just that baseline. And I acknowledge right now in New Zealand, those complicated issues have got much worse. Through ill-conceived tax and regulation, rent being the biggest, that are really hurting those on the bottom rung of the ladder. But I want a New Zealand where our next generation are world beaters, where they're competing with the best in the world in science and innovation and sport. But that requires a stronger economy, with the team, with the experience, the competence, and the acumen to get it done. Lucky, thank you. One soul clap from the front from my colleague who I paid. I was going to say to Cameron earlier, who asked a question, you could have written this speech, Cameron, because he used to, but he's moved on. Let's take two more and then we'll call it quits. Yeah. G'day.
body of knowledge of changing economic measures given the changes that are happening in the economic system. Do you think the measures you postulated today are visionary enough for the New Zealand of the future where we're heading?
I think ultimately, look, the basics still matter. I understand what you're saying, you know, the people who say we moved on from GDP, when you think about well-being and so on, we've heard all that talk from the government, and dare I say it, I hate to be cruel, but it is just talk, right? Because if you haven't got those basics, and I appreciate they are the basic building blocks, if you like, you can't even worry about the rest. You know, unless that mum in Kawerau has a situation where she can pay for her shoes and what her child needs, and maybe 1 or 2 extra classes after school, what use is the rest? And so that's why I don't apologise bluntly for being very, very focused on our economy by having measures here around growth, around GDP per capita, around business confidence, because they're not just numbers, they're not just statistics, they matter every little bit as much to the child growing up in Kawerau and the future that they possess as the wealthy person in Herne Bay. Last go at it.
Thank you, Simon. That's, I've enjoyed your talk.
Thank you.
One of the things from a business perspective, I think we'd be looking for, one of the changes I think would be important is a feeling amongst certainly the business community I work in, that there's a lack of instinct for business from this government.
A lack of, I'm sorry?
Instinct.
Right.
There's not much instinct for it. So when Jacinda travels around the world, you wonder whether she creates opportunities for business or understands what to say or how to leverage those opportunities. I think for national, this was a strength of John Key. We would be very keen to see this back. I think it's a major game changer.
Instinct requires practice. You know, Reggie McCaw didn't wake up one of the best rugby players in the world, right? He went it every day. It requires practice and it requires focus. And I don't think that government has it when the economy. They're very complacent. They inherited a good position. And I know they talk about 9 years of neglect. It was 9 years of progress. It was 9 years where the economy was incredibly strong. That gave options to do all manner of things, and we were doing them, right? They still, in a sense, are under that legacy. But we can't be complacent. Just like in footy, you've got to go out every day and kick. You'd practice it. The same is true of an economy. You need to keep at it. You need to keep making sure you're meeting those measures and those targets you've set yourself, and you've got to have a plan. What we feel very clearly comes through when I talk to anyone, as I say, from a mum in Kawerau, South Auckland, West Auckland, Herne Bay, you name it, is a very clear sense that New Zealanders don't believe this government has the plan. What I'm showing you today is not the announceables, but it is that we've thought deeply about the plan. We know what it will contain. We will come back to the 5 things I've mentioned to you in this speech around tax relief, infrastructure, small businesses, our families, less regulations, and you will see meaningful plans in all of those areas that together are a plan that, to use your word, has instinct, that we've practiced, and that we'll work hard on if we have the privilege to be government. Thanks very much for coming. I really appreciate your interest. Look in national, but more than that, in New Zealand and its economic future. Thanks so much.